Welcome everyone and welcome back. We have a big topic and a lot to talk about today, so we don't need any hesitation here. But first, I want to introduce a very special guest. I was happy to hear that he wanted to be part of this. You know who he is. He's been on this channel a few times. He just created the Popecast, where he talks about movie news, video game news, and all kinds of other stuff. He's a big cinephile like myself. Say hello to Mr. Zach Pope.
What is up, Cody? Welcome to our sweet life here. Thank you for giving me out that shout out. That was really great. But man, I'm super excited to talk about this because you invited me on here. You know I love horror. I know you love horror. So thank you so much, man, for having me on here.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. And there's the key word there, horror. Because Zach and I have been talking for quite a bit about how over the past couple of years, the horror genre has taken quite a climb, and we've been getting very, very effective, very good, and very meaningful horror films. But it wasn't always that way. Specifically from the years 2000 up till about 2011, 2012, we were only getting maybe one or two really excellent and phenomenal horror films that had a lot to say. But the modern idea of what a horror film is has kind of taken a big turn in not a very, very good way. And Zach, I'll let you lead us off.
So me being, I'm a big horror fan. If I usually hear a horror movie is bad, I usually don't go and see it because I'm tired of wasting my time with these horrible horror movies. And I mean, there's so many problems that we can go into with horror films, but just, you said there was a list of movies, and I have some of those movies. So I'll talk about the ones that, like, from 2000 to 2011 that were good. I mean, you have American Psycho, Final Destination, The Others, Fatality, The Ring, 28 Days Later, Underworld, Saw, Shaun of the Dead, Descent, Slither, Mist, Paranormal Activity, Strangers, Drag Me to Hell, Crazies, and Insidious, and literally a ton of others. But what I want to talk about is that with some of those films, though, you can say, oh, well, some of those aren't really horror. Shaun of the Dead, per se. Shaun of the Dead is a comedy with horror aspects, but I do still fit it into that horror genre because horror has a lot of subgenres to it. You have comedies, coming of age, psychological, thrillers, but those horror is the main word in there, like you said earlier, and that needs to be fit into each one of those.
Exactly. One of the biggest things why, Zach and I, we love it. And one of the bigger reasons for it is because it wasn't just a straight out horror movie. It was a coming of age film with some subtle horror elements. And those horror elements were very effective because you cared about everything that was going on around the horror. You cared about the characters. You cared about the story. And the movie had a lot to say. Unlike where the Saw franchise is taken, for example. I loved the first Saw film. I thought it was excellent. It was a really, really unique take on somebody that wanted to punish those who had done something very corrupt. But as the film series has gone along, it's just turned into a Gorno gore fest and a torture porn fest. And I don't know about you guys, but honestly, just watching copious amounts of gore and copious amounts of blood on screen with no reason for why it's there, it just doesn't interest me.
No, and it shouldn't. I mean, there are some people where that goes to, and you know, if you're a fan of that, that's your choice. Like, that is what's the best thing about movies. And some of these movies I talk crap about, you might like, and I'm not gonna blame you. Like, you might have your reasons for liking it. You might be scared of them. For me, it takes a lot to scare me, and I have not really seen any film that has scared me in a while. But you said Saw. There's so many movies that have ruined franchises. I would say the first two Saws are great. After that, just downhill. These are some other movies that have gone downhill where we feel like this is a big problem, is that the studios take these movies that, yeah, they can make for a very low budget and make money in the first weekend. You take the Bye-Bye Man this year. It made its money back in the first weekend. But then you also take some franchises where the Annabelle, the first one, the second movie I actually liked, but Annabelle, the first one, coming off The Conjuring was a fantastic film, and Annabelle was poorly done, but it made its budget back. Insidious 1 and 2 are very well done. 3 and 4 looks like trash, and 3 was okay. But then you take Chucky, Paranormal Activity, Nightmare on Elm Street's remake, we don't even want to talk about, the Halloween, and then one of the ones that honestly ruined the franchise for me was Sinister. Sinister 1 is a fantastic film, and Sinister 2 ruined the first one for me because it was so bad. It went and took the horror aspect and just made it this blood and guts fest for the second Sinister, and just made it all gory and stuff with no appealing characters. Deputy Dodo, So-So, whatever, he was one of the most uninteresting characters I could ever see in a movie. And I had no empathy to even root for him. I was just hoping Mr. Boogie would kill him the whole time, and he never did. Spoilers if you haven't seen Sinister 2, but you shouldn't watch it.
There you go, unapologetically gory, characters you don't care about, a film that just doesn't really matter because the studio's trying to take their money back. Look, I don't want to make this comparison, but the Transformers franchise, it and many of the horror films that have come out in the past have lots in common. It's just studios trying to get a quick buck because they know they can, because they know the audiences will go see it, without caring about producing a story, producing a message that the audience cares about. But Zach, we should probably get more into how the horror genre in the past 2 years has the past 4 years has taken a giant uphill and have gotten better and better and better.
Yes, so the last couple of years we've gotten fantastic films. The Conjuring, for instance. The Conjuring 2. VHS, The Visit, The Gift, Green Room, Witch, Don't Breathe, Lights Out, Ouija, Origins of Evil, not the first one, Hush, Alien Covenant, It, Annabelle Creation, Get Out, like you said earlier, and It Comes at Night, and one that I really want to talk about, The Babadook. Just all these films, like we said earlier, have a certain subclass genre to it that made these films better. And yeah, some of these actually are full-on horror films, given The Conjuring or The Conjuring 2, but given most of these have a very sub-genre to it. Take Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is not a horror film. There's no ghosts, there's no ghouls. It's just an old blind man who might have a dark past himself. You go to Get Out, like you were talking about earlier, which Get Out is one of the best films of this year. It's a dark comedy that has a social reference on racism, and its horror aspects of it are incredible. You take The Witch, which The Witch was one of my favorite movies of that year. Dark. The score is fantastic. This is things that these movies hold differently than take The Bye-Bye Man or Paranormal Activity 7. Whatever you want to say. The scores, the actors, the stories, the subgenres. That is what makes these movies so well realized. And plus, most of these are indie films, so a lot of them are kind of like the directors taking a risk, trying to do something different. It Comes at Night, a very diverse film this year that a lot of people hated. Very different. And like I said, I think studios should start realizing that these smaller independent films that carry a better story usually make back its budget and also get critical ratings. If they would just look at this and see how It does, I hope It and Get Out did this for the horror genre, because now studios are going to look at both these films and say, hey, they got good reception, they made a lot of money, and they made back their budget really fast. If we actually care and make the movies better, maybe we'll make more money.
You're absolutely right, but one thing I am hoping that the studios do not do is they forego the messages and just look at the profit that these movies brought in. Because inevitably, that is what franchises, that is what certain horror movies do. I mean, that's what the Saw franchise has done. That is what the Paranormal Activity franchise did. Taking the messages and taking everything that It Comes at Night, It Follows, and Get Out have done for the horror genre, I feel is more impressive, more important, and something that I completely agree with you, Zach. Something that studios should look forward to, because as it has shown, better stories, better movies that are constructed well and have something to say are something that most audiences cling to and something they're very appreciative of.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I wrote down to me, makes a good horror film. You know, you have to have a good villain or a good slasher, or something that's intriguing to the audience to be entwined by. The demons in The Conjuring, they look cool, but you're also intrigued to see what is their backstory to that. Lights Out, Samantha was creepy. Go back to The Ring. The Ring, Samara, was creepy. Slither, The Descent, the whole cave dwelling in The Descent is creepy, but you also move on. You want to make the movie scary, but with not just jump scares. You want to make it with the atmosphere itself. The atmosphere is key to most of these horror films. You gotta have good characters that aren't dumb. You gotta have maybe like a horror icon used in a great way, and then I think a big thing is acting and good cinematography. If you don't have both of those, it kind of makes the movie fall flat.
I completely agree with everything that you have said so far. A couple of the bigger things for me. Number one, you've got to have characters that you care about. Because if we're just going to sit here and we're just going to watch characters get sliced up and we're going to watch them die and there's no emotion behind it, I am taken out of a movie at that point. Number two, the music and score. Eli Roth has a quote out there somewhere that goes something along the lines of, close your eyes, not your ears, because inevitably, without a great score to go behind all the stuff that is going on, that is happening on screen, it doesn't really have the effect that it should. I mean, I take this with Get Out, I take this with It, all the other horror films we have talked about that we love. I'm sure that you, Zach, and everybody else out there can agree that one of the main reasons why these films were so effective is because of the score that was added in.
Yeah, no, the score is key for a lot of these horror films. Because I remember, I think it was Paranormal Activity 4. I went and saw it with some friends. I don't know why. But I remember one of my friends, he's kind of a baby on some things. And what he used to do is he actually used to do that. He actually used to close his ears and watch the screen. It would just be the loud noises that made him jump. But he was watching it and be totally fine. The thing about this, though, is I look at The Witch, or even The Green Room, or It Follows. Which those three films, the main important things of those is the score. The score makes those movies so much better. And I can't forget to talk about the sound mixing as well. The sound mixing, the eerie, creepy footsteps you hear. It Comes at Night is the most efficient at ever doing that. Where I was on the edge of my seat from someone just walking down a hallway. And it wasn't even that scary of a movie. Just walking down a hallway. And that is insane to see. And, like, even if we're talking about that, you gotta have a good mix of CGI and makeup. You don't have that, it's not gonna work. And you know what movie did that very well? It. Yeah, just came out, and they did that very well.
You know, it's interesting about It, because you guys know, Zach and I have talked about this to death. But It is not only one of our favorite films of the year, we're pretty sure it might be one of your favorite films of the year. And if you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend it, not just as a horror film, but as a film in general. It's really great. But between the music, the CGI mixed with practical effects, the characters and everything, it is just a great example of what truly phenomenal horror is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And something that It and other movies like The Conjuring have done very well is that even though It doesn't have a lot of jump scares, and same with The Conjuring, when there are jump scares, the reason they work so well is because it's built up. The tension building up to the scene. I remember, spoilers for It. I hate to do this, but I know it's early. There's one scene where it involves Bev and her dad, and something happens. It's in the bathroom. The scene's very tense. All of a sudden, she turns around, and Pennywise is there. That is the one jump scare that got me, because I didn't see it, one, coming, and two, the tension building up to that was so well done, and realized that I didn't know it was going to happen. It was very surprising. And like I said, The Conjuring holds that very especially. It does that a lot. Especially with the one part where the two girls are in the bed and they turn around and the witch is on top of the wardrobe. And that thing, I just made a Lion, the Witch, in the Wardrobe reference, is on top of the wardrobe and scares you. It just zooms in and pans in, and the music, the score, everything just worked so well in there. And like I said, I don't hate jump scares, it just depends on how you use them. Movies like The Bye-Bye Man and Paranormal Activity, well, the later Paranormal Activities, use jump scares to such an efficiency that it's just a loud noise with a cat jumping out, and that's not scary. That's just annoying.
Yeah, no, Paranormal Activity 4 or Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, I mean, just complete jump scare fests that didn't really apply anything. I remember I loved The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. That was one of my favorite films that came out that year. The Woman in Black 2, it takes everything that the first film gave us and wipes itself with it. Because the film isn't scary, it's ineffective, it's stupid, and plus there are so many jump scares in the movie. Somebody comes by to visit, there's a dog, there's a cat, there's birds, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare at everything. And at a point, it just started to piss me off.
Yeah, no, Cody, I don't know if you've ever watched the show Community, but there's one episode where it's a Halloween episode, and if you guys have seen Community, you know what I'm talking about. This is hands down one of the funniest things I've ever watched, but it's Troy, Abed, and Jeff. They're walking through this little cellar trying to escape these zombies, and all of a sudden this cat jumps out, and Jeff's like, what was that? A cat. Moves around the corner, cat jumps out again, and just happens like 3 times. Jeff's like, okay, screw this, I just want to go with the zombies. This cat is so freaking annoying. And the cat just keeps jumping out, and they just start running away from it towards the zombies, because at that point, you don't want to mess around with an annoying cat like that. And that scene is my gripe with every horror film that has some dumb animal or dumb cat or dumb whatever jump out that's not scary, or a friend coming from behind you going, hey, how are you? And you jump. That's not scary to me. Stop doing that, Hollywoods. Please stop. I know I'm ranting, but man, I'm getting out of breath because I'm being totally serious on this. That this is a serious issue in Hollywood studio movies.
I completely agree with you, Zach. We are on the same page. We are both ranting at this. And guys, it isn't just about us. If you have any comments you want to leave down below talking about how you feel about modern horror films or the direction thereof, leave them down below and we'll get back to you. But the direction of how the films directed from 2000 to 2011, 2012, it annoys me to no end. Because if we look at any problems any film has, some of the biggest issues always come back to the director. And honestly, if we look at the Saw films, James Wan was heavily involved with the first film. In fact, I think he might have directed it. After that, his involvement became less and less, and it's understandable why. Because Saw 3 through whatever we are now, it's nonsense.
Dude, you're speaking to the choir right here. Directors are the most important thing about the movie, no matter what movie, but we're talking horror, and I wrote down some great directors. I mean, we look back at the classics, these great movies that brought great iconic movies to us. Wes Craven, John Carpenter, Hitchcock, Sam Raimi, and even George A. Romero, rest in peace. But this is the thing. Nowadays, if you really think about it, what actual horror director do we look at and we're like, oh yeah, he's like the classic, like I will always remember him as a horror director. The only one I can really think of is, you said it, James Wan. He left the Saw franchise because they just wanted to milk it. He went to Insidious, then they wanted to milk it again, went to Conjuring, and from what I can see is that they maybe have a right route with Conjuring because he's still in his producing elements. I feel like he actually helped a lot more with Annabelle Creation, and maybe hopefully he's doing the same thing with The Nun. But we look at these other directors like Drew Goddard, who did Cabin in the Woods. He went super tongue-in-cheek with that movie, and that's fine because that's what helped the movie. You look at Scott Derrickson. He takes Sinister, and then he made a different horror film. And he's not one of those main ones that we look at and love, but he also did Doctor Strange. Fede Alvarez, he did Evil Dead, and then he did Don't Breathe. David F. Sandberg, a big director who went and did Lights Out, great small movie. Went and did Animal Creation, another great small movie. Now he's going to a bigger franchise. And that's what kind of sucks, is because we don't have that horror director. And maybe Robert Eggers, who did The Witch. He's only done one film, and maybe ahead of time, he's doing a vampire movie next. And maybe with that, maybe we'll start getting more of that. Or Jennifer Kent, who did The Babadook, maybe she'll start doing more of that. The thing about horror, though, is it's so hard to get a good director, because a lot of these directors, the second they do something, they get a better project, and they move on to a different genre to test their skills. I want a director that's like a Wes Craven or a John Carpenter or a Sam Raimi that brings back that classic feel. It makes me look at them and be like, hey, you helped make horror what it is.
Absolutely, which is one of the biggest reasons, although he's only had a directorial debut this year with Get Out, I am so excited for Jordan Peele. Because what he did with that film, the direction in Get Out, is some of the best, not just film direction, it is some of the best suspenseful horror direction I've seen in quite a while. And I am so happy because after Get Out, the studio was so happy with him that they wanted him to direct the Akira remake. But Jordan Peele turned it down so he could still do small budget films like he did with Get Out. And now he's going to be working on a horror film that deals with the way we socially interact with one another. And there we go. We have a great director working on a film that he's passionate about that has social implications about everybody in day-to-day life. He's becoming one of the most anticipated directors that we have. I can't say he's one of the best yet, but I think he has that possibility.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, subgenres. Jordan Peele's taking that horror genre and flipping it on its back and totally changing it into different subgenres within it. And that is what horror films need to do to honestly survive in this market. Because yes, we look at comic book movies, we look at action movies, we look at comedies. Those, to me, will most likely always live. Horror movies are kind of like the pain in people's existence. No one really gets hyped up for a horror film anymore. It given, and maybe the Conjuring films, but no one ever looks at a horror film and they're like, I'm so pumped to go see that now. Because a lot of the people just expect it to be dumb. I know some people who didn't go see it because they expected it to be dumb because of other movies this year that had come out. Yeah, they liked Get Out, but they saw The Bye-Bye Man, or they saw other poorly written horror films. And the market is so saturated with so many bad horror films. I mean, you go on Netflix and you go to the horror genre class, it's like Hellraiser 36, and that's what you get on there. You don't get the first one. You don't get the classics. You don't get these good movies. Maybe you have an It Follows or The Babadook on there. And when people watch them, they're more enjoyed to them. But I also have one more problem to bring up within the horror genre. And that's not, yes, we've talked about the studio. Yes, we've talked about directors make these films. I also think it's how the audience is. Audiences, to me, majority of them, give or take, actually do want these different type of films. But there's that one genre class that just wants to go see jump scares. And they're the ones that won't like The Babadook, or they're the ones that won't like The Witch, or even The Green Room, and they'll just find them boring. And honestly, fuck you.
It's one of the biggest reasons both Zach and I have an issue with modern movie-going audiences when it comes to horror films. This isn't like when John Carpenter was directing things. This isn't like Halloween, or Scream, or the original Nightmare on Elm Street, or Friday the 13th. Because of the damage that the past decade has done to the horror genre, so many people expect either a gore fest, a jump scare fest, a movie that doesn't have a plot that's just there to scare them. That going to see a horror movie, you have to be stepping on eggshells so nobody's feelings gets hurt. And it really irritates, let's be honest, it pisses us off when we go to see a horror film and people won't shut up. People have to react to everything that's going on screen. And people are shocked and hurt and say a movie sucks if it's deeper and has more levels than they were expecting. I mean, come on now.
Man, again, you're preaching to the choir because, like you and me both, I love horror. I know people that didn't like it. And you know why? Because they didn't think it was scary. I get it. The trailers built it up to be scary. But I would rather go into a horror film, not be scared, but come out saying, man, that had good characters, good story, and kept me intrigued the whole damn time. Because that adds... if you have a great mythology in something where an Alien Covenant, per se, I know a lot of people didn't like that film. I thought it was really good. I didn't care about the blood. I didn't care about the scary elements that they wanted to bring back. I just wanted an intriguing story and mythology adding on from Prometheus. And people might be different, but I'm preaching that I would rather have that than get scared. Don't get me wrong. If the movie scares me, that's even a bonus plus to me. But if I go in and get some good characters, good story, I'm going to walk out of that horror film with a better grade than most people.
If consistency proves anything, if the studios and directors, if we keep getting horror films that have deeper messages, have deeper meanings, and make people start to question the world around us, I don't know if you have the same thought, Zach, but I have a feeling that people will start to turn around. And honestly, I believe that the way to make the horror genre survive is, like you said, to keep making horror films that are deeper than what the marketing says.
I agree with you, Cody. The studio and other directors start taking this on board. I mean, I think the one saving grace I look at is Blumhouse. They have been the ones that have really been experimenting with some horror. Yeah, they've milked some stuff, but if you look at those ones, those are ones where they pair with Warner Brothers or such. When they do their own thing, it makes me excited to see, because they always try to do something different. Look at Happy Death Day. I don't know what to think of the film, but it has an intriguing premise. It's different. It's taking stuff from Groundhog Day, and that's something I haven't seen in a horror film yet. I want to see something different. I want to see stuff like Get Out. I want to see stuff like The Babadook. And maybe that it won't be all pushed to the full front, but the horror genre, I believe, can evolve And will it evolve? Only time can tell. The last few years have been great for the horror genre, and I really do think that we can get something special here.
Guys, our last words here is the fact that horror is one of our favorite genres. It is one of, in my opinion, it can be the best genre of film out there, but it's gotta be creative. It's gotta be well constructed. It's gotta make you care. It's gotta be deep. It's gotta make you think. It's gotta make you wonder. It's gotta make you want to research stuff. Films can be great, but it's up to the people behind them to try to create stuff that people are going to care about. And I think that's a pretty good place for us to leave off. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And Zach, why don't you leave us with some last words?
Cody, thank you so much for having me on your channel again. This is like the sweet life of us. We're talking problem with horror, and there's a lot of problems. We talk some good aspects, some bad aspects, and honestly, like you, I believe that the horror genre can evolve and will evolve. It will progress to be something great. Well, time will tell, though, on when this happens. The last few years have been great to us with horror, and I just hope that we can get more horror movies like this. But as always, guys, I'm going to be reading down in the comments below as well, hearing what your guys' thoughts on the whole horror genre in general is. And if you guys are looking for any horror movies to watch, you can hit Cody up at his Twitter or even at my Twitter at Pope the King. And I also come to my YouTube channel, check out some stuff. I do tons of reviews for all types of nerd stuff. Video games, trailer reactions, movie reviews, ranking lists, whatever. And I do a ton of other collabs over there. Me and Cody have a great collab over there for It, where we fan cast to the next cast. You guys should go check that out as well. But as always, guys, thank you again, Cody, and you guys stay classy.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks so much for coming on to this channel. Guys, if you couldn't tell, Zach's fantastic. Go check him out on Twitter. Go check him out over at his YouTube channel. Honestly, guys, if you have any questions about what we've talked about here today, or just anything regarding horror or film stuff or nerd stuff, you can hit us up. You can find me at _Cody_Curtis. Zach already gave you his Twitter handle. Go check out his YouTube channel, because if you guys couldn't already tell, we pretty much have the same personality, and you're gonna love the rest of the stuff he has over there. But as always, it is what you guys do say that matters. So what is your opinion of the horror genre? Whatever your questions, your thoughts, your statements are, leave a comment down below telling us your thoughts. And if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right there and subscribe and become part of the fray of nerds who love cinema. You all have a fantastic day.